Good day, everyone. We are Group 8 and here to present Introduction to Ludwig Wittgenstein's Philosophical Investigations for Philo 1 class. Introduction to Wittgenstein. Wittgenstein, born on April 26, 1899, came from a wealthy Viennese family. They are well known throughout Europe. Early on in his life, he pursued an education that is significantly different from philosophy, which is aeronautical engineering. From this, he developed his passion for the philosophy of mathematics, a field that eventually led him to Gottlob Frege. Upon meeting Frege, Wittgenstein then began his education under Bertrand Russell. Throughout his life as one of the most significant philosophers during the 20th century, he pondered on several philosophical concepts such as mathematics, logic, and language. Much of his exploration of philosophical concepts were published in his most notable works, Tractatus Logico-Philosophicus and Philosophical Investigations, which here are his works. To this very day, Wittgenstein's work impact modern philosophy, particularly in the views of language, meanings, and the philosophy of the mind. And before we start our readings, here is a quote from his book in Philosophical Investigations. A picture held us captive, and we could not get outside of it, for it lay in our language, seemed to repeat it to us inexorably. Chapter 1. Augustine and the Learning of Language. 1. When they, my elders, named objects and moved towards them, I saw this and I grasped that the thing was called by the sound they uttered when they meant to point it out. Their intention was shown by their bodily movements, as it were the natural language of all people. The expression of the face, the play of the eyes, the movement of the other parts of the body, and the tone of voice, which expresses our state of mind in seeking, having, rejecting, or avoiding something. Thus, as I heard words repeatedly used in their proper places in various sentences, I gradually learned to understand what objects they signified, and after I had trained my mouth to form these signs, I used them to express my own desires. This is a quote from Wittgenstein's childhood days. Did it remind you of your own childhood days? And the essence of human language is that individual words in language name objects and sentences are a combination of these names. Basically, because of him questioning everything about the language or what the elders were training him to be, he caught on that every word has a meaning. The shopkeeper scenario. I will edit my drawing here. Now, think of a following use of language in this shopping scenario where a person is given a slip marked 5 red apples. Okay, Tagalogin ko to, yung tao, pumunta siya sa nagtitinda. Tapos, yung nagtitinda, inopen niya yung drawer niya na nakalagay na apples. Hinanap niya sa table yung red, kasama yung color sample niya. Tapos, nagsalita siya ng mga numero hanggang sa 5. Tapos, kinuha niya yung apple naka same siya dun sa color sample. Tapos, saan ako? Kinuha niya dun, sa labas ng drawer. Now, paano niya nga ba nalaman kung ano yung salitang 5? Paano niya ba nalaman kung ano yung salitang red? Nakalagay dito, explanations come to an end somewhere. Bakit kaya ganon? Well, kasi, yung sa paniniwala ni Wittgenstein, kapag binibigyan nating kahulugan o meaning yung isang salita, hindi natin siya binibigyan ng explanation. Binibigyan natin siya dapat ng description. Yun kasi alam ko, yung kay Socrates, yung pinapaniwala ni Socrates, binibigyan natin yung mga salita ng kahulugan galing sa mga explanation, hindi example. Pero para kay Wittgenstein, sa description, hindi explanation. 2. The philosophical concept of meaning is present in a primitive understanding of language function. It can be seen as a primitive language serving communication between a builder and an assistant. The language is based on the words block, pillar, slab, and beam, with A calling out the stones and B bringing them in order needed. This primitive language is considered a complete primitive language. 3. Augustine describes a communication system, but not all languages. This system, it's appropriate for our region, not for the entire language system. So, kunwari, nagtanong ako, may gagawin tayong activity na meron siyang set of rules na, nakalagay sa isang surface. Tapos, baka yung reply mo sa akin, hindi ba parang board games yon? Pero meron ding iba't pang types of kinds of activities na ganon, na hindi din board games. Para matama natin yung definition na to, kailangan natin siyang i-narrow down or i-limit. 4. Augustine's conception of language is an oversimplified interpretation of a script, where letters represent sounds, emphasis, and punctuation, implying that they have different functions. 5. A child uses such primitive forms of language when it learns to talk. Here, the teaching of language is not explanation, but training. Kasi hindi nga siya sang-ayon sa explanation. 6. The ostensive teaching of words establishes an association between the word and the object, which may mean that a picture of the object comes before the child's mind when hearing the word. While this may be the purpose of the word, it is not the purpose of the word to evoke images. Well, even if that's not the purpose of the word to evoke images, the evoking images might be an effect of the word ostensive teaching of words. Now, remember that. However, it may be discovered that this helps to attain the actual purpose. Different training would have a different understanding of these words, so that might have a different outcome of the scenario. Language games. As for language games, in his first book, Tractatus Logico-Philosophicus, he presumed that words are like pictures we see in our heads. Bali, yung mga words, or yung pictures pala, para siya yung meaning ng words. Or, oo, yun nga. Pero, since hindi naman lahat nakakuha ng same picture kapag iniisip natin yung salita or isang phrase, baka magkakaroon tayo ng mixed signal kapag iniisip natin na picture siya. Ibig sabihin, baka magkakaroon tayo ng miscommunication or misdirection ng meaning of something. And so, he provided a new hypothesis that language is like a game, which we call language games. 7. These processes resemble language and can be considered language games. Some may even refer to primitive languages as language games. The processes of naming stones, repeating words after someone, and even ring a rosy can also be considered language games. The whole consisting of language and actions into which is woven is called a language game. 8. Let us now look at expansion of language. Besides a 4-block pillar, let it contain a series of words used as the shopkeeper in one can include a series of words used by shopkeepers such as block, pillar, numerals. Yung numerals, parang yung letter of the alphabet, 2 words, there and this, and color samples. Parang kapag i-imagine mo, yung sa scenario to, si builder A, binigyan niya ng order si assistant. D, slab, there. Tapos, binigyan niya pa ng color sample. Tapos, nung sinabi yung there, tinuro niya yung sa isang place sa building site. Yung ginawa ni Assistant B, kinuha niya yung mga alphabet up to the word D. Tapos, kinuha niya yung same color sample, tapos pinunta yung slab tapos nilagay niya yung mga yon, pumunta siya dun sa place at tinuro niya. Basically, yung paragraph 9 din dito, in 9, it talks about the previous use of words linked in numerals and the 2 words, this and there, but how children perceive this basic training of language. This approach helps children develop a strong foundation in the language. 10. The point of paragraph 10, how we signify words, how the specific use of these words of the objects is already known, and how the alphabet signifying as a numeral should be in order, so it shouldn't be A, B, G, C, but instead A, B, C, D. The descriptions of words uses cannot be assimilated to make them more similar, as they are entirely different. 11. The functions of words are as diverse as the functions similar to tools in a toolbox. However, the uniform appearance of words when spoken or encountered in script and print can confuse us, as their application is not as clear-cut, especially in philosophy. The function of words are as diverse as the function of these objects, and in both cases, there are similarities. Now, the belief of Wittgenstein, aside from describing the meaning of the word, picturing the word, making our words like a language game, he also believes that we should use words like a tool to us, for they are useful if not used, and might not fit certain situation if not used correctly.
Sa pag-aaral ng lengguwahe, makikita natin ng iba't ibang mga salita na tila wala ng pinagkaiba. Mula sa uri ng salita hanggang sa sariling kahulugan, kakaunting pagkakaiba lamang ang mahihinuha mula sa kanila. This kind of phenomenon widely exists in language. To illustrate, these words are like the handles that can be seen in a cabin of a locomotive. Makikita natin ng iba't ibang uri ng handle tulad ng handle ng switch, handle ng brake lever, at marami pang iba. Dito, mapapansin natin na sila ay magkakapareho ng nature. Lahat sila ay nagfa-function as a handle. Ngunit, sa kabila ng kanilang malaking pagkakapareho, makikita pa rin natin ang pagkakaiba sa kanilang gamit o function. Ganito rin ang mga salita. Minsan, we think that they can be used interchangeably in sentences. However, the mere difference in their specificity of meaning disproves their synonymous usage. Inherently, it is true that every word in a language signifies something. Lahat ng salita sa isang wika ay may kanya-kanyang pinapakahulugan. Ngunit, ang pagsasabi ng katagang ito ay hindi sapat dahil it is too general in nature. In order for us to truly determine the unique meaning and application of words, we must point out what kind of uniqueness each word has. In passage 14, the frequent usage of determiners in language or words that are used to refer to a totality of something results in vague sentences and therefore ambiguous meaning. In this verse, Wittgenstein labels the utilization of the word all as something that signifies the annihilation of expressions, as this limits the communication of one's thoughts and words. Every word has a unique characteristic. It always convey a unique meaning. And sa halimbawang ibinigay ni Wittgenstein, matatanto natin na ang pinakamabilis na paraan upang malaman kung ano ang tinutukoy at ipinapakahulugan ng isang salita ay sa paglalagay ng mga pisikal na marka rito. For example, person X owns a lot of construction tools. Each tool has a particular unique mark on it. So when person X asks person Y to get a certain tool based on the image of the marking he had shown, person Y will then immediately identify what tool he was tasked to get. This mark then functions as a label. Additionally, naming something is through this manner of recognizing a word's meaning and unique features. Dito, nais kong balikan ninyo ang panahon kung kailan ninyo unang inaral ang ating lengguwahe. Look back at that time and ponder on the basic methods your parents or guardians utilized in your education at home. Ngayon, alam ko na isa sa mga pamamaraang ito ay ang paggamit ng paraang pag-uulit, or a system in which the teacher says the pronunciation of a word to serve as an example that the student will then follow. Sa halimbawang ibinigay ni Wittgenstein, makikita natin ang ganitong pamamaraan sa pagbibigay naman ng mga color at word samples na nakatakdang ulitin ng estudyante. In this passage, the author asks us if these samples or examples are part of the language. Wittgenstein answered yes, ngunit hindi sila parte ng mga salita. Kumbaga, nagsisilbi lamang silang gayahan or gabay at hindi binibilang na kasama sa lengguwahe. However, it is also evident in the example that when a student is asked to count the number of a particular word in a sentence, they will count the sampled word as part of the sentence, even though its function is just to give an illustration. Our language is diverse. There is a multiplicity of words in our vocabulary. It is also true that there is a multiplicity of kinds of a particular word. Kung titignan natin ang ating lengguwahe, makikita natin na mayroong mga salita na sa unang tingin ay tila pareho, ngunit mayroon palang tinataglay na pagkakaiba sa meaning o application. Sa kabilang banda naman, there are words na sa unang pagbasa ay sobrang magkaiba, ngunit kung aaraling mabuti ay makikita ang kanilang pagkakapareho. These situations are the reason why classification of words can occur. Sa pagkakategorya ng mga salita, mas nakikita natin ang pagkakapareho at maging ang pagkakaiba ng mga ito. In passage 18, mahihinuha natin na our language is incomplete. Its whole system has never been finished, even tracing back to the origin of the earliest human civilization. Instead, language can be compared to an alive creature. para itong may buhay at patuloy na lumalaki at yumayabong. Mula noon hanggang ngayon, patuloy lamang itong pinagyayaman ng bagong henerasyon. In passage 19, madaling isipin na natantunan ng ating mga utak ang tunay na lawak ng ating lengguwahe. Kaugnay nito, marami rin sa atin ang naniniwala na na-master na natin ang ating lengguwahe. Totoo ito para sa karamihan, because we have lived our lives using the language that we know. So it is only natural that we already understand its whole scope. However, this is not possible. Language is broad and diverse. Kaya naman, sa passage na ito, makikita natin ang tinatawag na shortened and unshortened sentences o kilala rin sa tawag na elliptical sentences. In the example, we can observe that a single word can serve as the shortened version of a full sentence. Ang salitang slab ay kayang tumayo para sa pangungusap na bring me a slab. Ngunit, kaugnay nito, iniiwanan tayo ni Wittgenstein ng tanong. Paano nalalaman ng isang tao na ang nais na ipahayag ng nagsalita ay ang unshortened version ng sinabi niyang elliptical sentence? In this verse, Wittgenstein leaves a question on how do we mean a sentence in the sense of the number of words it contains when used in contrast with other sentences na may kaparehong kahulugan. Nabuhay ang tanong na ito dahil sa existence ng shortened at unshortened versions ng isang pangungusap. Sinasabi ni Wittgenstein na that we shall mean the sentence in such a sense according to the number of words it has when contrasted with other sentences that contain the same idea. In connection, the author raises an inquiry on do people actually think about the other kinds of sentences that are similar in thought with the sentence being used? Ngunit sa huli, we shall be inclined to say that we mean the sentence as the number of words it has because this creates the distinction of the sentence from other statements that bear the same meaning. In addition, the prevalence of shortened forms of sentences can be abundantly found in the Filipino culture. Take this scenario as an example. When your parent asks you to get the soy sauce in the kitchen because he is cooking, he will just shout, yung toyo, instead of kuhanin mo nga yung toyo. Even though he did not explain his order, you already know what he means. Ang shortened at unshortened forms ng mga pangungusap ay naglalaman ng parehong kahulugan at praktikal na aplikasyon. Ngunit, tinatanong tayo ni Wittgenstein, napagtatanto ba natin na kulang ang ipinapahayag nating pangungusap o alam natin na ito ay kasama na sa ideyang nakapaloob? Ang assertion sign ni Frege na it is asserted that placed at the beginning of the sentence proves to be useful as its mere presence already indicates that the statement is an assertion. Kaugnay nito, itinatakda rin ng assertion sign ng kabuuang ideya ng pangungusap sa kadahilanang nakikita na agad ang beginning and end of the sentence. Ang assertion sign ni Frege na it is asserted that, placed at the beginning of the sentence, proves to be useful, as its mere presence already indicates that the statement is an assertion. Kaugnay nito, itinatakda rin ng assertion sign ng kabuuang ideya ng pangungusap sa kadahilanang nakikita na agad ang beginning at end of the sentence. As such, its function proves to be similar to that of a punctuation mark.
In passage 23, language game is a form of life. Ang language game ay pagsasalita nito sa isang aktibidad o sa forma ng buhay. Ang wika ay pwedeng gumamit ng iba't ibang estruktura depende sa gusto nating iparating. Kaya't mayroong multiplicity of tools. It is not limited or fixed. Some languages come into existence and are obsolete or even forgotten. Ito ay yumayabong, nagkakaroon ng ebolusyon sa kung gaano karaming wika pati na rin sa uri nito. For example, reporting an event and speculating an event. To report is to present a subject that has been investigated, while to speculate is to define a subject without any evidence. And to know the function of different language games is to know their meaning. In passage 24, a question is more than its form. We can ask by utterances, such as, "Oh, I desire to have that bag." Or even a phrase in the form of question may not constitute an asking, like rhetorical questions. One must go beyond the surface of grammar. This opened the idea of forming statements in the usual form, allowing for transformational in language. We can change the format of descriptions to make clear what we want to convey. In passage 25, animals lack mental capacity, meaning they cannot think, therefore they cannot speak. The focus should not be on their ability to think. It emphasizes the language use, a fundamental aspect of human nature. Not necessarily tied to mental capacity, ang isang wika ay mahalaga sa pakikipagtalastasan upang magkaintindihan. Hindi tulad ng tao, ang mga hayop ay hindi gumagamit ng wika dahil hindi sila nakikipag-usap sa komplikado, may estruktura at gramatikal na pangungusap. In passage 26, learning a language involves giving names to objects, such as people, shapes, colors, and moods, as a preparation for using the word. It is more than attaching a label. Naming is also a preliminary step in language development. It is about how we can use this name in context. It is the foundation of how we combine them with different terms and languages. Ito ay nakasalalay sa kung paano natin ginagamit ang mga pangalang ito sa mga kontestong panlipunan at komunikasyon, paano ipagsama-sama, bigyang kahulugan, at paggamit ng mga ito upang makapag-ugnayan sa mga tao at sa mundo. In connection to passage 26, naming is not the only step needed for communicating. One can use these words in different ways, not just to refer to objects. Language is not just the uttering of words, it is the use of words and the activity of language. Names are not the only step needed for communication. We use sentences and words in many different ways. Tayo ay sinasanay na magtanong sa mga bagay na hindi natin alam ang tawag at binibigyan nila tayo ng sagot o pangalan. Mayroong ding language game na mag-iimbento tayo ng pangalan para sa ibang bagay o sa isang bagay. Halimbawa, ang pagbibigay ng bata ng mga pangalan sa kanilang mga manika at kunwaring nakikipagtalastasan ito sa kanila. Let's move on to passage 66. There are many games. Tiyak na mayroong isang bagay na karaniwan o hindi sila tatawaging mga laro. Kung titignan mo ang mga ito, hindi mo makikita ang isang bagay na karaniwan sa lahat. Ngunit may mga pagkakatulad, relasyon at isang buong serye ng mga ito sa gayon. A game is a structured play, but every game has a different ways and rules. These similarities can overlap and crisscross, containing overall similarities and details. This complexity allows for variety of games defining the term in various contexts. Sa pangkalahatan, ang mga larong ito ay isang komplikado at magkakaugnay na network ng mga relasyon at tampok. To connect similarities, Ludwig characterizes similarities as family resemblances. Kung makikita ang miyembro ng isang pamilya, nagkakahawig sila sa pagitan ng mga katangian, kulay ng mga mata, lakad, ugali, at iba pa. For example, number has a network of connections, prime, real, rational, and more. There is no distinguishing attribute between them, yet they all resemble one another. A single common feature shared by all the different instances within a category, such as games or numbers. One might argue that What they all have in common is a collection of shared properties, even if those properties are not present in every single instance. In 68, the concept of a game is the logical sum of corresponding set of sub-concepts. Hindi ka makakapagbigay ng isang tiyak na limitasyon sa kung ano ang binibilang-bilang ng mga laro. What constitutes a game and what does not is not defined by any one limit. You cannot give a precise limit to what counts as a game. It can be flexible without being unregulated. It is not everywhere circumscribed by rules. Halimbawa, wala nang anumang patakaran kung gaano kataas ang paghagis ng bola sa tennis o kung gaano kahirap ito. Ngunit ang tennis ay isang laro para sa lahat ng iyon at may mga panuntunan o rules din. In the next passage, we can draw a boundary for special purpose. Tinatalakay ang konsepto ng mga laro at ang kanilang mga hangganan. Maari tayong gumuhit ng mga hangganan para sa isang espesyal na layunin, ngunit maari ding hindi ito magamit ang konsepto. The definition of length measure, like one face equals to 75 cm, allows for specific purposes, despite the lack of its exact definition. Kailangan pa rin ang isang kahulugan ng katumpakan dahil mahalaga ito na maunawaan ang konsepto ng mga laro at ang mga hangganan nito. Giving examples is not an indirect explanation as general definitions can be misunderstood. Ang isang laro, kung ito ay walang eksplanasyon, mahirap maunawaan ang kahulugan nito. May isang sitwasyon na may isang tao na humiling na turuan ng mga bata ng isang laro. At may nagturo sa kanila na maglaro ng dice, ngunit tinanggihan ito ng humiling. Makikita dito ang kahalagahan ng pag-unawa sa kahulugan sa likod na tinatawag na laro. In passage 71, the exclusion of certain types of games does not necessarily need to be pre-identified. Rather, the context and description should be enough for understanding. Upang ipaliwanag ang isang laro, ang isa ay nagbibigay ng mga halimbawa at nilalayon na kunin ang mga ito sa isang partikular na paraan, hindi bilang isang directing paliwanag, ngunit para ito ay maintindihan. Pinupuna ng librong ito ang mga tradisyonal na problemang pilosopikal na nagmula sa mga hindi pagkakaunawaan tungkol sa wika. Ang pagtugon ni Ludwig sa ordinaryong wika ay nakaka-impluwensya sa maraming larangan na higit pa sa pilosopiya, kabilang ang mga kognitibong agham at teoryang panpanitikan na ginagawang mahalagang sanggunian ang kanyang akda sa kontemporaryong kaisipan. Maraming salamat po sa pakikinig.